What's up, everyone? Welcome to Enlighten the Shadows. Today is episode 38. Today is a really, really exciting one for me because, as you know, our guests from all over, guys, they can be quite a high profile with their career, or it can just be a regular working class person like myself. So yeah, I love to get a blend of guests, men, women, but particularly focusing on men, because that's what we do in Enlighten the Shadows. We want to encourage, empower and transform people's lives. So yeah, I got a cheeky DM on Instagram from an old schoolmate. Marv, we got some mad memories. We're going to reminisce, and it's kind of on the back of 𝗟𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏, who was with us on episode 36, talking about self-discovery. And I just love that episode. I'll put it on the screen for you guys. 𝗟𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 just went in, talking about all of his experiences traveling to Australia, the Far East, how it's really challenged his thinking and who he is as a person. But what I really love mostly is that he doesn't understand mental health properly, guys, and it's to his own admission, and he just wants to learn. He's being a scholar of it. He wants to help out, and I actually want to publicly honour the man for all the hard work he's been putting behind the scenes at ENLIGHTEN, on the Facebook group. He's constantly pouring mad love on people, and yeah, I just love his vibe. So big up 𝗟𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏. But today we have Christian Roberts. Slipped in my DMs, didn't you, brother? And here we are. We've sorted it out, mate.
Absolutely, that's it. No, thank you for having me, dude. I think like you say, I caught the episode. Like I've seen a few of the episodes, right? But I think the one with 𝗟𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 resonated a little bit because obviously know him, like we grew up together at school, etc. So I thought, you know what, I'm going to reach out to Rory and have a chat with him and see what the crack is. And yeah, just pleased to be here, mate. It's good to see your face.
Yeah, definitely. It's been ages, and I feel like it's been, I'd say, closer to 10 maybe than 5 years when we've had a real decent chat. Like you've settled down in Lincolnshire, haven't you? Like out Lincoln Newark way, I believe. I think last time I spoke to you was it 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏
lived Swinderby Way, and it was when I was about 18, 19. Got a house in Lincoln City Centre because my old man lived out in Swinderby, so lived out that way for a number of years, all sort of going through school, etc. But I now live in sort of just outside of Lincoln, so in the sticks a little bit, and literally as we've started talking, it's just started to hammer it down.
Hey, do you need a rubber dinghy? Are you gonna be all right?
I'll be all right, mate. I'll survive, I think. But lovely British summer weather, right?
I was gonna say, is your man cave got propellers?
It hasn't, mate. But it's fully watertight. So I'm golden, really. But yeah, lovely weather.
We'll have to sort out on the screen. We'll put pictures throughout this episode as we're going to bring back mad memories. I'm going to get my own scrapbook out, some of the football and things we'll chat about. But yeah, man, I remember I think it was about last year or a year and a half ago where you was setting up that shack, and I was like, oh, what a lad on it. Honestly, you did it from scratch. Obviously, you got a bit of help, but it was good seeing the process.
I mean, if you ask my wife, she'd probably tell you otherwise. But I'm not a kind of massive DIY person, so I very much had to get some help from. Luckily, the father-in-law, he's an electrician by trade, but he can do pretty much everything. So very lucky to have people within the family that could help me. But I think during lockdown, the wife was pretty keen to get me out of the house, right? So it was basically, why don't we build a log cabin at the bottom of the garden, and then I can sort of have that as my office / man cave, if you like. And yeah, we eventually got it done. And I think she'd have me living out here if she could, mate, if I'm honest.
It's a win-win, isn't it?
Yeah. But it's fully kind of plumbed. It's got electric, it's got internet, it's got everything in here. So technically I could live in here, but yeah, I think it was a labour of love. But I would say to anybody that absolutely do it, because it's ace. Really, really cool thing to have.
Got a little exercise bike, I can see it back there as well.
The Peloton, mate. Yeah. Again, lucky to get that through sort of a work colleague. His girlfriend works at Peloton, so ended up getting some nice discounts from that, actually.
Now,
so
that's not like a decor background ornament, is it? You actually do use it, don't you?
Yeah. It gets used, mate. I mean, we've got the Peloton on here, and then the running machine inside. I don't know if you you say anything with the wife, but she does a lot of running. She did the London Marathon a couple of years ago, and she gets out and about quite a bit. So she's bang into her exercise. I mean, I'll be honest, I'm not as active as I probably should be, but then that's just me being lazy, I think.
Hey, no excuses. I love that. You didn't come and pull one out of the bag. You're like, nah, just
no, mate. Yeah, well, you know what it's like. Like, obviously, growing up, we did loads of exercise, right? We were always on the go. It was kind of like football, sports, any kind of sports. You know, constant, right? But I guess as you get older, life kind of gets in the way a little bit. Having the two kids, having the two girls, and work and all of that sort of stuff. Finding time is really difficult, right?
Yeah. And your priorities change. Priorities totally change. Like, I think there's something happens in your 20s where, well, I shouldn't do that. There's different time frames for different people, but roughly in your 20s and 30s, there's this transition from like life's a game, no responsibility as such, and then you slowly oh shoot, I want to settle down with the love of my life, and then you're like, oh shoot, and then kids come, and then you're like, oh, then routines and discipline really comes into the frame where you can't just like casually like I'll go for a kickabout, or I'll go to the gym soon, and it catches up with you.
It's a balancing act, right? Like, there's only so many hours in the day, and actually how you use that time, you've got to use it wisely. And I think like, obviously a bit of a topic that we're going to chat about today with my old man, like, you never know what's going to happen, right? You've got to approach life, I think, in the way that actually time is precious, and how you spend that time is kind of got to be well thought through. Like, right? So, I mean, I'm 32, and like, it doesn't feel like it was like we were 18 yesterday, like kicking a ball about, or being at school and all of that sort of stuff, or those kind of. You literally, the only thing you've got to worry about is the next day. Kind of, it's been and gone. It's crazy how quickly time flies. And it's been a while since we've sat down and caught up, but I think that's to do very much with life.
You've
done what you've been doing and gone you are now, and a lot of the other lads at school, right? Like, kind of sporadically keep in touch with them, and you maybe see a while, or you'll bump into them randomly, or I guess social media is good for that, but it's crazy, right? Sorts of things are cool, like sitting down and catching up with you now and seeing your face, and
man,
like, you still look exactly the same as you did.
Hey, good genes. Good genes. I still get ID'd. Unlike what was his name? That Chip. When we were younger, we had to get someone to get the beers in. It's like, we'll get Chip to get it. Do you remember him with the long hair?
Yes, I do, mate. Crazy.
Steve. That was it. Steve, but we call him Chip.
Yeah. Chip. Yeah. Wow. I mean, I've got absolutely no idea where he is on the planet right now.
Crates of Budweiser. He was our go-getter, wasn't he?
Well, it was whoever could get it, right? Like,
you look back and you go, wow. I
think, like, I wish I had a better memory. Like, I don't know what you're like. Like, you probably remember things that I've forgotten, vice versa. Like, you try and think about some of the stuff and some of the things that happened when we were growing up, like at school, playing football, all of that sort of stuff. And like, I wish I had a better memory. That's the one thing that I sometimes sit down and think, I wish I could remember some of this stuff. Like, it's vague, it's there, but I guess some people have got better memories than others, right? Like, I don't know what your memory's like.
Okay, well, I think I'll go down memory lane. I'll be clean here, because I'm conscious of certain viewers who might be viewing and go, didn't know that. Do you remember back in year 11, so not too long ago, a certain person went away, so my certain location had a certain amount of lads round, and I remember it was on a school night. We intentionally set up having a party at my house, and it was me, I think me, you, Ricky P, Raz, and I feel like we're missing one. All St George's lads. And we got the alcohol sorted, and we had a right freaking storming night at my house. And we went to school the next day. And I tell you what, we were good little boys. We went to school the next day, but we were absolutely like hanging the next day. Remember? And we went to. We were just out of it.
I remember there was a couple of times, to be fair, around your gaff, and the one that sticks in the memory more than anything else is when there was a few more people, I think, but actually somebody ended up bringing a bottle of whiskey from somewhere, and we went wandering off. We went walking. Can you remember?
Yeah, to the woods. Yeah,
yeah, and I was in a real bad state and ended up in, I think it was in a bush of nettles, and got left. And then woke up like however many hours on my own in the middle of nowhere, and then came back to your house. And you were like, "Oh, hey, it's Christian. What? It's like, what's going on? Like, what? We just left you, mate. You were all right." I think somebody stayed with me for a little bit, and then they left. But it was, yeah, I think that was back in the day where it was kind of like whoever's house we could get round where the parents weren't there, right? And just get hammered. But I guess that's what you do when you use, right? You push your luck, push your boundaries.
Yeah, of course you do. Yeah, it was good. It was healthy. I don't think we were ever stupid with it, but yeah, we did. No, we pushed the boundaries.
Always good fun, right? Always good fun. Like we never did anything like ridiculously stupid, but I guess it's just young kids, sort of teenagers growing up.
Yeah,
definitely. Experimenting with alcohol, seeing what your limits are. I mean, there's pictures kicking about. I think they're probably on Facebook. Like, there's some pictures of your gaff down. Oh, where was it? Where was
Bristol Way? 𝗟𝗵𝗿𝗀𝗁, wasn't it? The bungalow there.
Yeah, that was it. Yeah. That was it. Yeah. And it was that kind of that close group of friends, right? Like me, you, Raz, P. There was a few of us, and then it kind of went through school, St George's, and then like football wise, because obviously when we were a lot younger, we played football together, right?
Yeah, man, that was our connection, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I was saying just before we jumped on here, it's like what, 27, 26 years, something like that we've known each other, which is a crazy long time.
Yes, mate.
But like those, and that's weird, right? I said about memory and remembering things, but those memories stick with me, even though it was back when we were like real young boys. And the sort of the team that we had was awesome. Like we had some really good players, right?
Yes, man.
Like you and Ben Morgan were just absolute goal machines. Like hitting the onion bag for fun.
Yeah.
And then the rest of the squad like was just littered with real good players.
Matty Hardy at right back.
Yeah. Matty, I mean, Matty was still a very good player. Yeah, but I remember there's a few years ago now, I went down to watch him play for Metheringham because I managed those boys for a little while. But he got a really bad injury, bless him, playing. I remember watching the game. It was a horrible injury, and I don't think he ever really played again. But yeah, Matty Hardy was a good little player actually. 𝗟𝗵𝗿𝗀𝗁𝗏 in goal. Can you remember? He was the smallest goalkeeper in the league.
Yeah.
Somehow was like
unreal,
insane.
Wearing his little schmeichel cap with a crown on it, the champions. You love that little Man United cap. Get that off. But no, mate. It's class. So like growing up, obviously your dad was like instrumental with getting us to where we were, I think, and trying to get that mid-links youth A League. And yeah, man, like even before then, like when we were like 6, 7 years old, getting us down the rec, down on the Boston Road, and making us do that, get your warm up around the lap of the big field and come back. And I always remember when there's that session, he'd be like trapping the ball. So obviously, you'd fire it in the air to you quite high, a good 10, 15 feet. So if as a kid, that's a good amount. And then you obviously got to trap it dead under your studs. And I always remember, like, trap it, trap. And he was like, come on, Christian, trap it. And I was like, okay, I'll trap it. Like, I'll trap it, yeah. But it was like, he has such a good balance of like discipline and that kind of like strong, masculine, fatherly role model that you needed around. In the football realm, it's just like, wow, like he was just like, I don't know, he was just fiery and like it worked. But there was that nurture behind it, and he made you better as a player. And it's all those little fundamental skills And I always remember he used to tell you as well, you used to do shuttle runs, first going back, second, and he'd be like,
Yeah.
Open your legs. Open.
Yeah.
I used to tell you, open your legs.
Oh, mate, that still rings in my ears today.
Literally, I'm like there, the queue going. I'm like, which way am I open? Does he mean forward or side? I'm like, I'm opening my legs. I'm opening.
Honestly, mate, it was obviously having my dad as the manager of the football team was good in some respects, but then horrible in others, because like it'd almost be harder on me than everyone else. But then I think it kind of everyone else would then see that and maybe like you say, like that open your legs, like run, actually run, like open your legs, run faster, run quicker. And it was just like constant all of the time. But he made us better players, right? Like you say, those fundamentals, those basic skills that you need to be able to play football, that kind of progressed with us through the age groups. And it was tough love sometimes, right? Like I remember like there'd be games where some of the kids would come out of the dressing room crying at the end of the game because he had goose us, right? It'd really tell us off. And but you know, you look back now and you think, wow, that was probably a bit harsh at the time. But you know, it was, I think, a big part of us growing up. Like, you know, a lot of the boys like that were involved in that. And I'm sure if you probably ask them all now, like looking back on it, they would say that it was a big part of that kind of early years of A, playing football, B, but then that kind of that building that team spirit. Because as a team, we were a really good team, right? Like you know, it's not a coincidence that we went and had trials at Notts Forest and the county, and like you, Raz, Ollie Curtis, Ben Morgan. I mean, I was never good enough to go to the, like I'd go and do the trials, but obviously I was always like, thanks for coming, but you boys, right? You know, you got to that kind of that next level, and you know, I think Dad was a part of that, right? I think he helped you kind of progress to that. I think obviously you had a lot of natural talent, like yourself and Ben certainly knew where the onion bag was, but yeah, he was massively instrumental in that. And I guess that's kind of my relationship with my dad. Was he was obviously my dad, but he was like my best mate as well. So like growing up, it was kind of, he was constantly there. It used to annoy me, like I'd be playing a game and he'd be absolutely leathering me from the side of the pitch, and I'd just turn around and be like, what? Just give it a rest, man.
Leave me alone.
In the middle of a game, and you're absolutely giving it to me. But I think it was all out of that born of, he just wanted me to do better. Do you know what I mean? He kind of, he could see it was that, you know, he wants you to improve. And I think because I spoke to him, obviously when he was poorly, like we'd sit down and have like really long chats about stuff. Like he'd get really philosophical. I think towards the end when he was quite poorly, like he was, he very much, he kind of believed that there was a reason that it was happening, and you know, very much found kind of religion at that point. He'd never been a hugely religious person, but kind of towards the end, he'd found that. And I think it gave him comfort, right? Like he'd kind of come to the conclusion that it was happening for a specific reason, but he became very philosophical, and we used to sit down and chat quite a lot. And obviously the football days used to come up quite a lot, and he was like, oh, I used to love you boys, like getting down there on a Saturday morning, doing the training, like I used to love it. And then the games on a Sunday, and you know, he was proud, really, really proud of kind of, because obviously I can't remember what age it was that he stopped, but you know, after that point, the kind of team started to break up a little bit, right? Like players maybe went elsewhere, and like I know you definitely kind of went and pursued a slightly different path to the rest of us in terms of your footballing, because you were good enough to. You know, you had that talent, but you know, he was always proud, and he'd always kind of asked me, like when I was like in late teens or whatever, what are the boys doing, where they're playing, how they're getting on, etc. And yeah, he loved it, mate. Absolutely. I mean, those days were, looking back, like really fond memories of them, right? Like really enjoyable times. Like
even when he used to hotbox his car with his beer farts. Freaking lethal. I'll never forget that. Was it when we went to one of our first proper full-size games at Wibberton away, and we won? Was it 9-1? I think we won. And we were driving there, and it was the year that song because I got her, because I got her. That was on, and I'll never forget it. And he was literally like, he must have been on the Raz the night before. He must have had a few beers,
Probably, yeah.
And literally, I remember just like this little quiet, awkward moment where everyone was quiet, and then the next thing you know, it was like, oh my gosh, it's like windows are wide open, it's like hanging out like, ugh.
As much as a serious person as he could be, right? Like whenever the game finished, or he'd done what he wanted to do, he was then a kind of completely different person. Like he was, really, really, really good fun to be around. And I think, as much as towards the end there was maybe the parents thought he was a little bit too hard on us.
Yeah,
I think that was all born from a good place, right? Like, yeah. I think it was always in our best interests. But yeah, they were good days, man. They were good days. And then I guess kind of following on from that, the school days of you and I, like St. George's. I mean, that was an experience, right? Like you look back on school, and this is the thing. Like, I don't know if you feel the same about this, but as a person, as an individual, I've changed quite a lot since school. Like you do change, right? Like you keep some of the fundamentals, but you actually grow as a person.
People don't like that when you change.
No, but then I think as human beings, we're all adverse to change, right? Like I don't think people embrace change a lot of the time, even though some of the time it's for the betterment of them. But looking back in school, like I did some silly things, right? You look back and you think, oh God, I can't believe I did that, or I said that, but then there was a lot of times, right? There were so many incidents at school when we were growing up, and I think like 𝗖𝗵𝗿𝗀𝗏 alluded to a couple of them, and you maybe touched on one or two, but there was always something going on, right? It was never. Mate.
I'm going to take you down memory lane again. So
go on.
This is a bad one. This is on me though. This is a bad one. Oh shoot. So in school, right, this is for the viewers, this guy here was like outright the funniest guy in our year by a mile. And everyone knew it. He was just constantly on the Raz with like banter, constant. Like just, I don't know, it was just fuel. It was his petrol. But I remember it was again, year 11. And this is where I went a bit like, I had the wrong way around. Year 7, 8, I was dead straight and A1s in classes, everything top sets. And then as it got serious, I became less serious. But it was outside the English block. This is for the viewers. And the English block faced the whole playing fields. And there was a girls' football match going on between St. George's and the girls' high school. We weren't there. It was just like, a good 100 yards across. And we were all queuing up. This is before 4th period, so just after lunch. We were all stood outside. And we're like, a bunch of the lads, and I said, "Oh, go on, get your out, get your boobs out." But TITS, get them out. Someone shout it. Yeah, no, you shout it. No, you shout it. And everyone's like pussying out of it, like, "Oh no, I'm not going to do it. Oh, I'm not doing it." And then literally, I'm looking at Chris going, "Go on, mate, you do it." And he was like, "No, I'm not doing it." And I said, "Oh, you bunch of pussies, a lot of you." So I just stepped forward and I just went, "Oh, get your out!" And then literally, everyone was like, "Oh my gosh!" Like so we all like turned around, stood there like awkwardly, like, and all you heard was this. So Mark Wallington, former Leicester City and England goalkeeper, who was a PE teacher, I heard him just go, and I can't believe he knew it was me because he just went, "Mr. Green," and then literally, I was like, "Oh shoot!" He was like, and he stopped the match, and it was like 100-yard walk, and he's like, "Come here now," and then I had to do this walk of shame all the way across, and you lot ran off. Anyway, lo and behold, I get to the pitch, and he makes me apologize to every single of the 22 football players, the bench, the 2 teachers and the managers, and then I look across, and my mum was on the sideline because she was a girls' football manager. And I was like, head down.
That's a prime example of just a bad decision, right?
Bad.
That was a really bad decision. And there was a lot of them at school. I remember hitting a stone with a tennis racket after we'd had PE, and I hit Mr. Wallington in the head. Do you remember that? Were you there? We were, you know where the cupboard was, where you used to put all the equipment back? round the side of, and you'd come round the side of a new block.
Yeah.
And we were all mucking about around there, and we'd had the tennis rackets, and we were just, you know what it was like when you'd leather a stone with a tennis racket and it'd just go. Like really, really stupid thing to do. And I just remember hitting one, and as I hit it, he walked around the corner. It's like plonk. It's like, oh my God. And that, yeah, I mean, just things like that, just real stupidity. But
yeah,
like the lasting memory for me was just like how close-knit of a group of lads we were, right? Like
big time.
Every single day, like break time, lunchtime, we'd be together playing football, like doing whatever, like
𝗟𝗵𝗿𝗶𝘀𝗁.
Yeah, like that's weird though, right? Like I was chatting, who was I chatting with about it the other day? Like at break time, you'd go and get like the chicken pie or the sausage roll, and then at lunchtime or there was like those turkey Twizzlers and
by
all of
Danny
that sort of
Bartop's
stuff.
mum's flapjack.
Yeah, like again, right? So random, right?
But he was like drug dealing. He was extorting us.
But he was a pioneer. Like,
yeah,
how much money did he make? Like he'd be like, those guys are like crackheads for flapjack. So I'm just gonna go home, get my mum or whoever made it, and just sell it for like £1, £2 for whatever. And like, every day he'd come in and people are just paying for it. And I can't believe he actually got away with it, to be fair. Like the school never pulled him up on it from what I can remember. But
no.
Yeah, the school days were just real good fun. And like a lot of those boys now, like I think kind of where they are, like I know a few of them are probably still knocking around Sleaford way, and
yeah,
like Ricky P, he's he's living in Lincoln with his wife now and his little boy, and it's a shame that you're not as in touch as what you were when you were that age. But like you say, you change, right? Like priorities change, and I think even if you go past school, like the nights out at Flicks. Wow, Flicks, man. Can you remember Flicks?
Oh my gosh. Wow.
Yeah, because it was Raz's uncle,
do we even go there?
No, it's obviously just a completely different thing. But like Raz's uncle, like owned it, right? It was his
Phil.
establishment. Phil, that was it. And like it would always be like, Raz, can you get us into adult Flicks? Yeah, no problem. Clearly underage. Like I remember being in Flicks and bumping into teachers from St. George's, and them just being like, "You're not supposed to be in here."
Yeah.
But like such good days. But then I think what I was referring back to is those kind of the actions that you do. It's like there were certain things that I did at school that I'm definitely not proud of looking back now, and you kind of look at it and you cringe and you think, I wish I hadn't done that, or I hadn't said that. And actually, if you were to see certain people, you would probably be apologetic for like, oh my God, I can't believe I said that or I did that back then. But you kind of learn from that, right? And I guess for me, the position that I'm in with my two daughters at the minute, they're sort of 8 and 5, which is crazy. And I'm kind of trying to bring them up and like thinking, well, I definitely don't want them to do certain things that I did when I was growing up, right? And I'm incredibly lucky because they're both amazing girls, like really well behaved. And I kind of look at it and I think, I don't know where they've got that from, because I was
weren't you.
Well, yeah, right. It's like I was a bit of a jack the lad at school, and looking back, wishing that I'd maybe paid a bit more attention to certain things. Yeah.
Pay it down, that was it, just a little bit.
just a little bit, right? Like, and I think it's that craving for attention and always wanting to kind of be the kind of the person that's got everybody kind of laughing and joking and stuff. And I'm sure the teachers didn't appreciate it, right? Like,
no.
If you asked them, like having Christian in a lesson could be problematic, to say the least. But I just look back at really, really fond memories, right? Like really enjoyable days, like really good fun.
Definitely. Like we talked about your dad earlier, and I think there's a lot to take away from that. And like he was into his boxing, wasn't he? Before he was diagnosed, he was really into white collar boxing. Yeah.
So he'd boxed pretty much all his life from a young lad. He'd done it on and off, and he was a bit of a brawler, if you like. He'd never never shy away from any of that stuff. A lot of collar boxing actually, and doing a lot of training, and had a couple of fights and stuff, and actually got himself in real decent shape, like in that sort of part of his life, like late 30s going into his 40s. And yeah, he absolutely loved it. Like, I did a lot of training with him at the time, and sparring with your old man, getting in a ring with him, and being able to I wouldn't say beat him up, because obviously far handier than I was at that stage, but yeah, loved it, mate. He was well into it. He loved that kind of, he buzzed off that kind of energy. So
yeah.
But whether or not any of that stuff actually led to what he ended up getting, it's really interesting to kind of think, what maybe it did contribute to it, maybe it didn't. You don't know, right? It's difficult to know, really difficult to know, because you don't know what causes those things, right? It's difficult to just to sort of say, well, maybe getting punched in the head was a contributing factor. You look back at it and think, well, my old man, I vividly remember it was kind of back when the first kind of mobile phones were knocking about, and he'd come home every sort of so often with a different phone, and he was constantly on it, right? You think, did that contributed to sort of what happened? But yeah, he was big into his white collar boxing, mate. He did enjoy it.
When you found out about it, what year was that now, if we're looking back?
2012.
Yeah.
And I remember it so vividly, because I was at work. So for everybody kind of watching, like, my dad owned a software company,
Gemini.
And Gemini, that's it, bang on, mate. Good memory.
Yeah.
I worked for him. I was lucky enough that he gave me an opportunity when I was younger. I actually started as a telephone receptionist, and I had to work my way up. Like, he gave me an opportunity to have a job, but he didn't give it to me on a plate, right? Like, I had to work my bollocks off to kind of get to where I was. I remember we were at work, and I went up to see him because he was the sales director, and I was having a conversation with him about a prospect. And he said, "Oh, I don't feel very well." And my man was always a little bit of a hypochondriac, so he would over exaggerate things, right? Like, so he'd be like, oh, and I'd be always like, "Shut up, what's up with you? Stop being stupid," right? He's like, no, I feel really weird. And I was like, "What do you mean you feel weird?" And he stood up. And I was like, "You're right." And then he just collapsed, like, bang. Like, I was like, whoa, like,
yeah.
What's going on? And he couldn't get up. And I was like, what? Like, this is bizarre. Like, this isn't right. So rang an ambulance, and the ambulance turned up, and they started doing loads of tests on him, and they were like, "We're going to have to take you to hospital because something's not right." So they took him to hospital, and obviously at that point, I'm kind of thinking, he's maybe not very well. There might be something that's he might, something not as serious as what obviously it turned out to be, but kind of got to hospital. We went up there, and within sort of 6 hours, he'd been scanned, and they came out and said, "Listen, we've got some bad news, but there's something that appears to be like a tumor, on your brain, that we can't say exactly what it is right now, but it's not looking good." And obviously, like, we had Dad may have known in himself prior to that something wasn't right. Like, you don't know. As his son, he never came to me and said, "Oh, listen, I'm not feeling great, or these things are happening and I don't know why." But that was kind of that, out of the blue. Like, any other day, middle of the week, sort of all of a sudden, boom, that's it. And like within 6 hours, your dad's got a tumor on his brain. And it was kind of like, whoa, right, okay, where do we go from here? So yeah, back in 2012 that was. So it'll be 9 years this October that he passed away. I think from that point of him finding out that he had a tumor to him passing away, it was about 9 months.
9 months. Wow, it's not long.
Something like that, yeah.
It's crazy as well, because like when I was diagnosed with breast cancer, and it spread to a lung. I was at uni in America, so you just remember it so clearly, and it's so hard to articulate it when you're going through it. You know, when you're trying to, you know, accept it, because you don't want to accept it, you want to deny it, you want to ignore it, and especially as a bloke, you know, we enlighten the shadows is for men's mental health, and you know, I think a lot of the reason why it was birthed was when I lost my baby, like I had to do something about it because men just don't chat right. And so I relate in ways to you, because obviously, you know, it wasn't my dad, and you know, I didn't have a relationship you have with your dad, but it's just so tricky to like navigate through, because like no one teaches you this. No one at school teaches you grief. They don't teach you how to process really adverse situations that come your way. You've got to just like find your way through it somehow. Like, so how did that, you know, because obviously you had your little half brother Keegan as well, and then, you know, so you're like middle child like me, you've got your older sister and Beck. how did you kind of like, as a middle child, like navigate that, and as a bloke, and you know, looking out for your brother, what did you kind of abandon your own needs in ways, or?
So it was obviously at that kind of that early stage, we didn't know that it was terminal, right? Like it was kind of, listen, we found this. This is something that we need to kind of delve a bit deeper into. But that initial kind of shock, like it hits you hard. And I remember, because my brother, he would have been 10.
Yeah.
Would have been maybe 9, 10, something like that. And like for his sake, and you kind of look at it, because me and Becky had that, you know, a lot longer, right? So we'd had that time with him. We'd had that kind of ability to kind of do all of those things that you do with your parents, whereas Keegan didn't necessarily have that time, right? And all of a sudden it very much became a case of, well, we've got to be strong, because for him, like this is his whole world, right? Like all of a sudden he's got the prospect of his dad being really, really poorly. And then when we found out that it was terminal, it was kind of, it then goes to a whole nother level. Like I was incredibly angry to start off with, like real kind of couldn't understand why it was happening, like loads of different emotions. And you because at that time I was my now we were in a relationship together, boyfriend, girlfriends, and we'd been together for a little while, but not a huge amount of time. And you know, all of a sudden she's having to deal with me having all of these emotions and things, and having all of this stuff, kind of trying to figure it out. And like you said, you don't get taught this stuff. So as men, I think society, it's very much kind of, we're conditioned to be, you know, to kind of be the strong ones, the people that ultimately, you know, keep your chin up, all of that kind of mentality of, you know, men, you know, you can't cry, you can't be upset, you've got to be seen to be strong. And actually, I remember when we found out, like being in the hospital, like causeway, hallway, whatever you want to call it, and just literally crying my eyes out. And like, and I think looking back now, like you've got to be able to express your emotions, right? If you suppress that stuff, if you stop that stuff from coming out, it kind of, it creates something inside you that isn't necessarily a good thing sometimes. But yeah, I think the lasting thing was kind of trying to be okay for Keegan, my sister as well, and for my dad, right? Like, this is a bloke who was almost seemed invincible. Do you know what I mean? Like, he, to me, kind of seemed like nothing could ever kind of hurt him, or and then all of a sudden he's very, very vulnerable. And I'd never seen that in my dad before. Like, wow, yeah. All of a sudden, like this guy who I looked up to and had kind of put on a pedestal and viewed as a bit of a hero, like he was incredibly vulnerable and scared. You know, like somebody tells you that you've got terminal illness, kind of your reaction initially is he tried to hide it, but you know, I think it's difficult, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, it was such a raft of emotion, such a kind of a journey like that. That 9 months just took me to some seriously dark places. And on the flip side of that, I got to create some incredible memories with my dad.
Wow, that's cool.
Which, you know, it's such a pendulum of feeling sort of real low. Like there was points with my mental health and with everything that, you know, you can let it consume you. And then kind of the flip side of that, actually spending some of the best times with my dad that I'd ever had. And that 9 months, like looking back on it now, crazy, absolutely crazy.
You mentioned that fear and feeling scared. Like, again, you talked about how society conditions, and I'd even go as far as institutionalizes boys as they go through, you know, early years, primary school. We won't mention about Lessingham St Andrews, how you beat ours at football, but yeah. So yeah, and then, you know, you go through secondary school, just the conditioning you're like, and you know, even like when we were teenagers, we say it's a long time ago, but it really is in the grand scheme of history. Like you're talking 10, 15 years. That's not that long ago. And, you know, we were, I'd say, the last crop of true thoroughbred, like, you can't show you're truly scared. You can't show weakness truly, like especially in school, like really cutthroat environment. It was almost like kill or be killed, like not literal, figuratively speaking. And you mentioned even your dad. It's like this is dynamite kind of stuff to talk about, because I feel like we're slowly transitioning a society where we're creating that space for men to feel fear, to acknowledge the fear, to say that they're scared, and then controversially, like, I feel like if we go too far on extreme, we lose that sense of grounding and resilience and strength where we do actually need to try and press in. Like ultimately life does kind of in ways happen to us, but we have choices to respond. And, you know, I love that. And thank you. And I appreciate your honesty. I love how you admitted that even your dad was scared. Like,
100%. No, and the thing is that looking back on it now, like I would say, even in the last 18 months with everything that's happened, right, you know, in lockdown, like life drastically changing. Like there was a point for me during the last sort of 16 to 18 months where I'm very, very lucky actually. The company that I work for is incredible with regards to looking after its employees around mental health, around well-being. But I got to the point, I think it was probably around about September last year, possibly a little bit before, but I couldn't function. I hit a brick wall, and I literally. And the thing is with my career, with my job, what I do, like I have to perform all the time. Like it's consistent every single day. There's KPIs, there's targets, there's metrics that you're consistently measured against.
Wow.
And you have to perform like all the time. And I've been in this kind of arena now. I've been a kind of, I'd say, maybe the last 10 years at least, as a kind of what I do. And it's that pressure, that mental fatigue that you've got to consistently go through. I just hit a brick wall. Like I couldn't function. And obviously I'm married, I've got 2 kids, I've got a high pressure job, and I didn't want to get out of bed. Like you get to that stage where it's like, I don't want to get out of bed. I don't want to do anything. Like I don't want to talk to anybody. I don't want to. And I literally approached my boss and I said, I'm broken at the minute. Like I can't perform to the level that I need to perform at. And they gave me 2 weeks well-being leave and just said, just go away and look after yourself. Don't worry about work. Don't even look at work. Just go and focus on trying to be okay. They provided a load of support and stuff for me as well. And I think as a society, like 10 years ago, a lot of businesses, they would not have done that, right? They would have just been like, well, do your job, like maybe take some holiday out your annual leave, but do your job, or go and talk to somebody. And as men, I think we've got to, and this is the one thing that I've learned the last couple of years, is that mental health is very much a real thing. Like as you're growing up, you kind of don't really think about it, I would say, because it's not necessarily prevalent, or it isn't necessarily something that's there a lot of the time. But as you kind of grow older, your mental health and how you approach things, and what you do with your life, and looking after yourself as an individual, I think men don't pay it enough attention, or really accept that it is a thing that you need to be aware of. So for me personally, like everything that I went through with my dad, and even like the last 18 months, it's kind of like, you've got to try and make sure that you're listening to that voice inside of your head. You've got to pay attention. You've got to kind of listen to your body. You've got to be aware of everything that's going on, because if you try and suppress it or ignore it, that's when eventually, no matter who you are going to hit a wall. And it's then kind of, how do you deal with that? Have you got the sort of the right people around you? Have you got the right kind of support? Have you got the things that you need to be able to kind of get past that stuff? And I think that's why, like, suicide and people that get into the position where they actually think that it's better for them not to be here than it is for them to be here. That's why so many men get to that position and maybe ultimately take their life, because the previous period in time is that they've maybe not thought about those things or looked at that stuff. And actually, as a society, I think it's starting to slowly change, and businesses are changing, and people's perception is changing. But I think there's still a lot of work to do, right? Like the stuff you're doing, having these types of conversations, highlighting this stuff to men, so that it is okay to feel the way that you feel, to have those feelings, to have that range of emotion. It's absolutely okay to feel that way. Nobody is okay 100% of the time, and if they tell you that they are, they're lying, right? It's just not possible.
Yeah, man, definitely. It's wow. I remember, I think I might suspect when that was as well, because there was a time where you came off social media, or Facebook, you came off. I think it might have been the same time. I don't know if that was connected, but I think you just had enough of the intensity of the climate of the world and the things being said. And I think you just wanted to kind of like, just kind of park that. And I remember you saying you were having time off it, I believe.
Yeah, no, I think, listen, social media as a concept, as a pure thing, I think is brilliant, right? Like when we were growing up, if you remember, it's like MSN Messenger's kind of my earliest kind of memory of MSN, like, and once you finish school, you finish school, right? Like you were away from school, you'd maybe interact with your mates, and kind of MSN and having a phone was the way to do that, like back then. But then kind of it went from that to maybe MySpace is one of the things that I can think of. 𝗵𝗿, yeah, I don't think I ever really engaged with 𝗵𝗿, but MySpace was the one I remember, like being able to customize your wall and have your music and have your top friends and all of that stuff. And like back then, it seems not very innocent, but it was completely different to what it's like now. And I think flip side of social media is that it's just transformed into this place for a lot of negativity and a lot of kind of and I think it's detrimental. Like I fear, like things that I worry about for my kids is that, when I left school, that was it, I'd left school. But nowadays, if you're being bullied at school and you're on social media, that bullying can continue. Like,
that's a really
people can get at you still, right? Like if you want to have social media, you almost have to accept that you are open to people critiquing you, potentially abusing you. Like, and I know you've said and I've picked up on a few things, and obviously don't want to dive into this too much because it's completely a different topic, but like you have your opinions on things and your views on things, right? And I've got absolutely no doubt that people have attacked you on social media, or been disparaging, said things to you that ultimately, and this is the thing for me, is that I questions like, would you say that to me in the street? Like, would you say that to my
They
face?
wouldn't.
It's easy enough exactly.
They never say it to my face.
Yeah. But then that's what I mean. Like, social media for me is, in some aspects, is great, but in others is just transformed and continuing down a path that I looked at and I thought, I'm going to just step back from this for a little bit, because I find it incredibly difficult sometimes when I read or see things that it gives me a real sort of emotive response that I have to maybe reply or engage with. And actually, it wasn't doing my mental health any good. Like, I was thinking, I was getting angry. Like, I'm sat in my front room and I'm getting angry at something that is written on Facebook that actually, in the grand scheme of things, I shouldn't be getting angry about. Like, and that's why I took a step away. And yeah, maybe it did coincide with that kind of point in my life. But it's social media is one of those things, right? That like you see it a lot at the minute, kind of the one recently with the young lads, the England players, Sancho, Rashford.
Yeah.
Who was the other lads? Bloody hell, I forget his name.
Saka.
There's three of them on there. Saka, yeah. And then getting the fact that people can racially abuse three young lads that have, like, I mean, I've taken penalties in football matches, like you've taken loads of penalties in football matches, and never obviously in that sort of situation where it's that high pressure, but anybody taking a penalty, like, you've got to have some bollocks on you to get up there and do it. And the fact that those boys did that, they missed, and they were devastated by it, right? Like, they would have been absolutely rock bottom at the fact that they've missed those penalties. And the fact that you've got idiots on social media being able to openly abuse them, racially abuse them,
it's mad,
with little to no consequences, is just, it's insane to me. Like, it makes absolutely no sense how people can get away with that stuff. But that's what I mean. Social media is just a whole different beast, right?
Yeah, like I say, it can be used for good. It's people.
100%.
People that taint it. But yeah, it's not real. I say, it's not real. It's not like, having a respectful one-to-one conversation. I think it takes that element out of it. Like, I think if you actually were having a one-to-one conversation in a peaceful environment, like, I think more people see eye to eye more and respect each other's, even their diversity of how they observe the world. But I just think people sometimes do lack the maturity to dialogue properly as well. And again, I don't think we were probably taught that either. Like, the art of dialogue, like, you have a stance, they have a stance, let's talk about it. But it's always, it finishes with, I'm running away now because I think you're awful because of what you've just said. It's like, well, okay, let's just go on. But yeah, man.
But that's the thing. Like, one of my lasting things from school is, and I've still got all of my school reports, and one of the things that was kind of a consistent undertone in the early years was, Christian needs to recognize that his opinion isn't necessarily the opinion of others, and if they have a different opinion, that he needs to sort of openly accept that. And like, that stuck with me kind of through life, is that I do like to think that I'm right in a lot of things, like we all do, right?
Don't we all? Yeah, I was about to say.
But it's kind of, as I've kind of grown older, it's like, okay, you've got a different opinion to me. That's fine. Like, I don't necessarily agree with your opinion, but the problem with social media and sort of having those opinions is that if you've got an opinion and you don't necessarily need to then get nasty about it. It's when people turn nasty and start, questioning or trying to make you look stupid, or they're patronizing and all of that sort of stuff. It's like, well, hang on a minute, like, we're trying to have a normal conversation. Why does it have to go down that avenue? But I think a lot of the time it comes down to the fact that people don't necessarily have the words or the ability to express how they really think and feel. So they kind of revert back to that basic, well, you're effing wrong, or you're this, you're that, and it becomes very much a slagging match. But yeah, I think you know, the sooner that we can maybe get a little bit of a handle on social media, and I think the fact that we as a civilization have allowed it to get to the stage that it's at was maybe not the best decision that we've ever made as a civilization, right?
Yeah.
Like allowing certain companies to grow to the size that they are and have the power that they have, and ultimately it's probably one of those things that we hopefully we can get a bit of a handle on. But interesting.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's how you approach it. Like, you know, on Twitter, I'm like mad positive, and yeah, I always remind people there's some great people out there, and I think it's the last safe room left in the world where people can literally get away with what they want to get away with. If you think about the way society in the last even 50 years, how we've surveillanced ourselves and how good we've cracked down on like just really bad immoral behavior and you know, illegal behavior. I think literally like the anonymity of your social media account is the last kind of like straw that people have where they're like, kind of get away with this. Because I know we've gone on a mad tangent here, but I remember watching the Ted Bundy series on Netflix, and I was like, the one thing that stood out, I was like really fascinated by it all, and I was like, if this was today, he wouldn't have got away with like 90% of this, because he obviously he did it in the Northwest and he went down to Florida, and he was like, there was no surveillance, and he just completely got away with it. I'm like, that would never happen today. So yeah, I just think like these days it's like people's last little area where they can literally just let out that just horrible behavior that's within.
Oh yeah, you know. Yeah, 100%. I think but that's the thing, right? Is that then it comes into that, well, if they make it sort of regimented to the fact where you maybe have to have some form of identification to be allowed to go online and put your opinions and thoughts and whatever across, people then look at that and maybe start to say, well, that's, you know, that's against my freedom as an individual. But then I think it has to have some form of regulation, because if it's left unchecked, it will just continue to evolve to the point where it's very much a case of like, I won't be letting my kids on social media for a long time. Like, and you know, I've seen parents that give their kids mobile phones. Like, how old were you when you got a mobile phone?
Yeah, no, don't get me started. I had a Vodafone 𝗖𝗵𝗿𝗀 in year 7, and that was like my mum being very kind. And then I got like a Nokia 3310 like a year and a half later. But even then, I knew I was very, very blessed, and my mum was being very kind to me. But smartphones. Oh, my kids, bless them.
Like 8-year-old kids, 7-year-old kids with smartphones. It's like, that just blows my mind like crazy. But I guess we have kind of diverged off.
Yeah, it's good.
So apologies for that, mate. I think
it's good for the viewers, like talking off topics and going somewhere, because like when you strip it back, it goes back to fathering, it goes back to boundaries, it goes back to what do you allow, what do you not allow as a parent. And you know, you're a father, you know, one day soon I'll be a father to be, and well, I'd say I am a father because I lost one last year. But yeah, it's like you think about these things, and it's important because it's how we go forward as a society. And you know, thinking about your dad as well, like what for our viewers, like what's the number one or the most impactful thing you kind of learn in I say, because this is really where you find beauty in his suffering and even his death. Like what could you, now looking back, because it, you know, when you're in it, you just can't see the wood through the trees, you're like, I'm just hurting right now. But you know, looking back now, what could you say, wow, that stood out for me about him, or even about myself, or the process of the suffering or the death? Like what did you learn most out of all of that?
I think there's probably a few things, right? And actually I would say nearly sort of 9 years later, there's still things that I'm unpacking from it. And this is the thing, is that it doesn't just it happens. And actually people would deal with things in different ways, right? Like bereavement, losing a family member, losing somebody that you love. You know, it can take a long time before you've maybe properly processed something. And you know, if you ask my wife or my mum or my sister, they'd probably still say that there's things that I haven't dealt with. And I'd probably agree with that. But I think the one thing is that I think about him every day, right? Like, he was arguably my best mate as well as a dad. Like, just watching my kids grow up and the fact that he missed out on that, and like every single day I kind of think to myself, what would my dad, what advice would he give me? What would he do? Like, and I factor those things into a lot of kind of the things that I sort of say and do. And if there's a really difficult decision to make, like, always wonder what sort of advice he would give me. But I suppose, like, the one thing that I would say is and it makes me kind of appreciate it more, is that just make the most of the time that you have with the people that you love, because actually you don't know what's going to happen. Like, life can be so cruel. And I think for me, like, for a long time, I couldn't understand why my dad was taken from me when there were people that were walking the earth that were far, like, just you would say actually didn't deserve to be here. Like, it's almost like a trade-off. Like, I could not get my head around it. I couldn't understand. And then kind of one of the things, and Dad was really poorly. Like, the tumor that he had was one of the worst tumors that you can have, and because it was in his brain, it affected who he was, like how he behaved. And actually, there was times when I'd go and see him, and he would tell me, I never want to fucking see you again. I hate you. And I'm like, hang on a minute, I'm your son. I'm here to kind of be with you. And then I'd go and see him a couple of days later, and he'd be a completely different person. Like, it changed his mental state. It changed who he was as an individual. But the overriding thing for me was that he actually knew. So I was lucky enough that we found out that we were pregnant with Ava. So while he was poorly, we were able to tell him, listen, like, we're going to have a baby. And the amount of joy that brought him was, like, unbelievable. Like, you could visibly see it, and kind of it almost gave him a bit more life. Do you know what I mean? Like, you could see that it kind of gave him energy. And he passed away in the October, and Ava was born in the January, the following January. So only a couple of months after he'd passed away. But he said to me, and I vividly remember it was like, I'm going, but you're getting Ava. So it's kind of like he almost saw it as like the circle of life. Even, like, he was like, you're losing me, but you're getting Ava. And he, like I say, he found religion towards the end. I think it gave him a lot of comfort in that he was going for a higher purpose, if you like. Like, he'd got it in his head that he was off upstairs to some important task. You know what Dad was like, right? He was kind of like, oh, he needs me up there. I've got to go up there and do something for him, or there's something that he needs me for. So I'm obviously the man for the job. And I was like, yeah, no, absolutely, no doubt about it, mate. Like, but yeah, I think it's that just time is so precious. And I know that might sound like a cliche, but you just don't know what's going to happen. And just try and love the people that you've got around you, whoever that might be, like your parents, your kids, your brothers, your sisters, like whoever it is, boyfriend, girlfriend, wife, husband. Just make sure that you, and tell them that you love them, right? Like, actually make sure that they know that, because if they don't, and something happens, like, you'll regret it. Like, you'll regret not letting them know that. Don't be stubborn. Just kind of let that stuff go, and make the most of it. Absolutely make the most of it.
I love that, man. It's beautiful. Because he was called Bish, wasn't he? That was his nickname, Bish, short for the bishop. He was the bishop. That was his, that was his nickname, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was Bish. Yeah, we the girls referred to him as Grandad Bish. Grandad Bish. Yeah. There's some stories about him. Oh shit. Being Bish. Yeah. Ginger Ninja. He very much had, like, in the 80s, had one of them, like, terrible ginger kind of porn star tashes, like
Oh yeah, I
photos of him
saw it.
knocking
I
about a
remember
load.
seeing a picture of it. I do actually. Yeah, yeah.
But I think the one thing, another thing that really stuck with me, and for a long time, like I think I mentioned to you when we sort of started speaking the other week, is that like I was in a real dark place when he died, and this is the kind of guy Dad was. He ended up managing to convince Lincoln Cathedral that he should have his funeral there, and got his funeral at Lincoln Cathedral. It's like mental. I remember when he died, when he passed away, I went to a really dark place, like really kind of to the point where I think I said to you, I had a choice. And I kind of vividly remember thinking, like, I've got a choice here. Like, I can go down that road and kind of embrace that and, you know, go down a really dark path and let it consume me, or I can kind of go down this path, which is, okay, I've lost my dad and my best mate, but there's things that I've got to do. I've got to, you know, I've got a daughter, I've got a baby on the way. At that point, didn't know if it was a boy or a girl. You know, I've got a baby on the way. I've got a career. I've got all of these things that I need to carry on doing. And it took me a number of years. Like I say, it's sort of 9 years this October, but it took me a number of years to accept what had happened and to actually ultimately, you know, and I think by talking about it, this is the other thing as well, is actually being able to talk about, like talking about my dad with you now brings back loads of memories, like, and it makes me feel good. And I think being able to talk about it, and that's the one thing, is that having conversations with my family and friends about my dad allowed me to kind of move forwards, because yeah, I'd get upset, and yeah, I'd cry, and yeah, I'd be emotional. But actually it was happy kind of,
yeah,
sad, if that makes sense. Like remembering my dad, talking about him, actually, that he, you know, he is gone, but he'll always live through me, and the sort of my mannerisms and certain things that I do and how I act, etc. And I was lucky enough as well that, you know, after he passed away, he had written me a letter that I keep in my drawer, and kind of, you know, that was kind of a letter that he'd written to me specifically, and he got me a print, a 𝗟𝗵𝗿𝗀𝗏 print called "You'll Never Walk Alone." Obviously, being massive Liverpool fans that we were, and that sits proudly in the house. And I think, you know, being able to talk about things massively helps, right? Not locking it all away, and actually having those conversations with people. And even with the girls now, like they've never met him, but they know about him, right? Like talking about him, letting them know who the Grandad Bish was and all of that sort of stuff, you know. But it is, losing somebody that you love is incredibly hard. But just knowing that they as an individual would want you to carry on, they would want you to continue living your life, want you to make the best of that, of what you've got. And I think that was a big driving force for me. Like, you know, my dad would want me to bring the kids up well. He'd want me to be successful in my career. He'd want me to do the things that make me happy. He'd probably want me to still be, you know, playing football or boxing or whatever it would be if he was still here. But, you know, just knowing that I'm happy, I've got my wife, I've got my kids, and that actually I've got a good career, and knowing that he would be proud of me gives me a huge amount of kind of solace and happiness as well. So incredibly tough, but I think you've got to make sure that you don't let it consume you, right? And that's an incredibly difficult thing to do, and everybody's different. But talking about things and actually not being afraid to be vulnerable, I think is probably another thing, is vulnerability. Nobody likes being vulnerable, right? Like if you're vulnerable, it's not a nice feeling, especially for men as well. Like you don't like to be vulnerable, you like to be kind of strong. We seem to be in a position of weakness, but it's okay, right? It's okay.
Yeah, man.
It massively is okay, and actually taking advantage of these sorts of things, like speaking to you and having knowing that there's people out there that have gone through similar things or are there to just have a conversation, right? Yeah. Doesn't be that they need to have the answer. Doesn't need to be that they've got a magic solution for you. It's just listening, using your ears, keeping your mouth closed and listening to somebody is hugely powerful.
Yeah, bro. Oh, love that. You didn't pick out one. You got 2 or 3 jewels out of there. I love that. Top man. But yeah, man, I've enjoyed this so much. But before we close, it might even be the advice you'd dispense from obviously your dad suffering and ultimately in passing. But our Enlightening Shadows question, bro, is just we got one bit of short piece of advice for a guy who has watched this today, and he's taking things in. He's taking stuff that you've dispensed. He's grateful, but he's just still thinking, I just don't want to be around. Is there anything you can just encourage them with, bro?
I guess one of the things is compare yourself to kind of who you were maybe yesterday or the day before that. Don't compare yourself to somebody else who they are today. Like it's comparing yourself to other people or looking at other people or being and thinking to yourself, well, I wish I had that. I wish I had this. Like it's you as an individual, right? Like as long as you can improve slightly every day, like worry about the things that are in your control, like just getting out of bed, taking a shower, going for a walk, speaking to somebody, having a conversation, whatever it might be. Those are the things that are within your control. Yeah. And taking those small steps every day, they might not feel like actually over a period of time, those small steps might get you back to that position where actually you feel like you're okay, or you can contribute, or you're happy in terms of where you are as a person or as an individual. And I think that's massively important, right? Like, yeah, man. Don't worry about things that are outside of your control. Don't compare yourself to other people. Like, you are you. Like, first and foremost, win those little battles, do those little things, take those small steps. Eventually, where you get to, you don't know where you'll get to. You don't know where it'll take you. It might be that you get your dream job. You might meet the love of your life. You might, God knows. It really is one of those things that it's the unknown. But just win those little battles and talk to people. Try and talk to people. You're not alone. Absolutely not alone.
Love that. Oh, some boy.
Awesome.
Smashed it. Love that. But yeah, guys, this has been sick. Christian's on Instagram, on the screen right now. We'll put his username. We've put it on throughout this episode, as you already know. And if you haven't subscribed to our YouTube channel, get on it. We're going for 500, which is halfway to 1,000, as you know, quick maths. And we just want to get across worldwide, guys. We're not playing. We really are passionate about reaching men from all over. We don't care what cultural barriers they are or what they're going through. We're just going to be there for them. So yeah, just click that red button just below the screen, just to the right side. And also, we have seen in the recent weeks the private men's Facebook group just really popping off. It's honestly, guys, it's really blown me away and blessed me, because I'm seeing, like, some of the admins and myself have been chipping away for a good year now, providing encouragement, providing talk space. And it's an honor for us. It's a privilege. It's never a slave type mentality where, like, oh, we have to do it. We're just honored to do it, guys. But what I've seen, guys, is you lot popping off on there, encouraging one another, not really needing our stewarding, just going for it. So it's really, honestly, it's blown me away. We've grown quite a bit in the last week or so, and with that has come the conversations and the offloading and the love. So yeah, on the screen right now is that Facebook group. So if you go on facebook.com/groups and then just enlighten the shadows, and it's it's totally safeguarded. There's 10 rules on there you have to accept to honor in that group. And it's a really good place to just offload. But yeah, this has been episode 38 with Christian Roberts, and we'll see you next week. We've got a good set of episodes coming up. We've got we're going to talk about the retreat I went on in Cornwall, some stuff that's really challenged my life, guys, in mad ways. And then the Enlightened boys, we haven't met for a long time now, so we're going to do like a post lockdown catch up, see how the boys are doing. We're going to do it in person as well. But yeah, Christian, bro, we'll have to talk more now after this. The momentum's
Absolutely,
there.
man.
Love it, bro. But yeah, thank you for your time.
Thank you for having me. No, thank you for having me. It's been really good to chat, and yeah, just keep doing what you're doing, mate. You'll get there. I think hats off to you. I think what you're doing is awesome. So keep fighting the good fight, my man.
And you, brother. Thank you. Cheers, guys.
Top man.